Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the City Council meeting for March 2nd, 2009 to order. First thing on the agenda, as always, is the roll call and determination of the quorum. Member, if you would, please.
Quaker.
Give me the little seat.
Olson. Kroger. Costello. Hadcock.
Here.
LaCroix.
You going now?
Martinson.
Here.
Weifenbach.
Here.
Okrepke.
Here.
Chapman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you have a cell phone or a pager, we would ask you to put that on vibrate, self-destruct, self-shocking, or whatever you would. Just a rule of thumb is if your cell phone does go off, you'll be buying donuts next go around, so that can get pretty expensive, so if you would turn those off. Also, if you wish to speak to any item on the agenda tonight, or any item not on the agenda, we do have speaker request forms to your left, to our right over here at the media table. If you'd fill that out and turn it into Amber down at the end, to Amber wave. Thank you. And that way, as we make our way down the agenda, we'll make sure that we recognize you. Next on the agenda is the invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by Tim Coates from the Harvest Time Free Will Baptist Church. If everyone would please rise, and after the invocation, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Can I share a funny story before I pray, Mayor? This gentleman came up to his pastor and said, "Would you pray for my hearing?" The pastor immediately put his fingers in his ears and prayed for him, and he said, "How's your hearing?" He says, "I don't know. It's not till next Wednesday." Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for our city and for all the leaders and the citizens and the visitors, and we pray your blessing and protection upon each one of us. We pray for wisdom and courage upon our leaders to make good decisions, and I pray that there would be good health on them and their families, and their businesses would prosper, and just give us your protection. Let us all know your salvation, and let us all pray according to our own faith and religion. I ask in Jesus' name, amen.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And if you have any items to be added to the agenda, if you'd please turn on your lights. I do have one thing we need to do for housekeeping. We need to move item number 89 to follow item number 90. So we'll move to 89 to the very end of the agenda. Any other items that we need to add to the agenda tonight? Please turn on your light. Any other items? If not, the chair would look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Whoops. Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there an alcohol license to be set for hearing that should have been added?
Mr. Preston, I didn't hear you. I didn't see you turn your light on. What item would you like that to be listed as?
2A. 82A.
82A, we'll call it. And that is set for hearing, correct?
Set for, yeah. It's a set for hearing for an alcohol transfer.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other items?
I would
Mr.
recommend
Green.
that be placed on the agenda with the other set for hearing items rather than the public hearing items that have already been advertised.
My mistake.
Perhaps 2A.
As a 2A? Okay. What do we do? Well, let's just call it 3A. How's that? Just to be argumentative tonight. 3A. So, any other items to be added to the agenda tonight? If not, the chair, once again, would ask for a motion for approval of the agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to approval of the minutes. The chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes of the February 17th, 2009, and correct the minutes from the December 15th, 2008 to reflect a correct project number for the West Boulevard Area Sewer Reconstruction Project, Phase 2 on 11th Street and the 11th Street project, number SS09-1772.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes as amended. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to awards and recognitions, and I have a special request if I could have the council join me down front. And I'd also request Mr. Vandergeest to come up and join us. Come on up here, Jack. And you know, one of the true joys is to recognize some outstanding citizens that we have here in Rapid City. And we have a special occasion tonight, and it truly is a pleasure for me to give you an executive proclamation, Jack, and if I could read this for you. This is an executive proclamation from the mayor and the city council. And it reads, whereas it is right and proper to give special recognition to our outstanding citizens, and whereas March 3rd, 2009, marks the 66th anniversary of the escape of Jack Vandergeest from the Buchenwalden, is that how you pronounce it? Buchenwalden concentration camp. And whereas during World War II, Buchenwalden held an estimated 238,980 prisoners, and Jack Vandergeest survived the death camp of the Holocaust by hiding beneath the bodies of dead prisoners, other dead prisoners. He is the only living person of 8 known escapees and can speak to the unbelievable strength and faith of those people who endured the unspeakable actions of the Holocaust. And whereas today we honor Jack Vandergeest on his 66th anniversary of his reported death at Buchenwalden, and we are proud that Jack now calls Rapid City, South Dakota his home, and that he is able to share his powerful experiences with us. And as Americans, we must never forget the terrible hardships and injustice that Buchenwalden, and we must stand together to make certain it never happens again. Now, therefore, I, Alan Hanks, Mayor of the City of Rapid City, and on behalf of the City Council of Rapid City, do hereby proclaim March 3rd, 2009 as Jack Vandergeest Day. Jack, thank you. I'll give you this. Now, Jack, just so you know, there's an awful lot of people that know your story around the state. And I will tell you, with a little bit of effort from myself and Alderman Quaker and other folks, we also have someone who wants to recognize you. And this is an executive proclamation from the state of South Dakota from the office of the governor. And there again, let me read this if I may, Jack. It says, whereas 66 years ago, Jack Vandergeest was one of 8 known individuals fortunate enough to escape the horrors of the Buchenwald concentration camp, and whereas there are survivors that were liberated at the end of the war, but Jack is the only escapee from Buchenwalden still living, and Rapid City, South Dakota is proud to call him a resident. And whereas Jack has a copy of his own death certificate, which is on file at Buchenwalden, and a picture of which appears in the 2002 edition of his book, Was God on Vacation? Yep. And whereas it is fitting and proper as governor to recognize the citizens of our state that have had a significant impact on the lives of our citizens through the sharing of his story and his commitment to freedom, now, therefore, I, M. Michael Rounds, Governor of the state of South Dakota, do hereby proclaim March 3rd, 2009 as Jack Vanderkeest Day in South Dakota. Jack?
Here, here.
And I'll let you hold that one.
Jack?
You have to say a few words for us, if you will, please.
It is not easy to lay still for 1 minute. You try to lay still for 11 hours in a pile of dead bodies. And you have to remember what will go through your mind when you lay there. And finally, that I could be able to jump up. I didn't expect that after laying there for 11 hours. But I made it. There was just one German guard walking around the pile of dead bodies. I was able to jump up and kill that son of a gun. I took his uniform, and just at that time a truck came, and they said, I was in uniform. They said, gehen Sie nach Weimar? In other words, are you going to Weimar? Yeah. He thought I was going to the girls and the beer and the booze, and yeah, I didn't mind that. So, yeah. So I got at the camp gate, and I was lucky I was the only one on board of that truck. I was sitting away in front, and of course in uniform, and I took his rifle too. I made sure that I had a weapon with me. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And I went out of camp. Then I came at the second gate, the same thing. And I thought, gosh, I never knew it was so easy to get out of a death camp. But it was all my luck. When I came out, I came in a farmer's house, and the farm woman at that time asked me, what can I do for you? He said, I'm hungry and I'm lost. She said, no, why don't you come in? Later on, when I talked to the family, I found out that this woman knew that I was an escapee of Buchenwald. And he never said a word, because she laid her own life on the line, because if the Gestapo would have found out that she would have helped me eating and giving a place, she would have been killed too. So just to show you, I don't hate all the German people, just the Nazis. And believe me, I took care of a lot of them. They cannot speak against me anymore. But I have lived in all this time here in Rapid City. It is over 55 years now. It is a good time. It is a good place. When we look on the coast, what's coming up now in New York, they can have it. They can have it what they have in California. And we're sitting here with 60, 70 degrees, and you just look up and like there's nothing going on. So I love Rapid City and the people in it. Thank you very much.
Would you do us an honor and take a picture with us over here? Here, why don't you come on over here, Jack? Thank you, everyone. I know that's a little bit unusual to have the council down there, but I think this was one of those special nights where I thought it was appropriate that we all showed our appreciation for Jack. And there again, I want to thank everyone, especially Alderman Quaker, who helped as far as putting this together. And with our request into Governor Rounds, we were able to get that proclamation. So thank you, Alderman Quaker. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the general public comment period. If anyone wishes, let's see, this is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns of the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the members present. I do not have any speaker request forms for this period. Does anyone wish to speak to any item that is about any item not on the agenda? If not, we will move on. We're on to number 1. This is an update from the Rapid City Economic Development and the Black Hills Business Development Center. And we're going to have, David, you going to do this?
I'm going to start off.
Okay.
All right.
David Hillard.
And next time, make sure that we don't have to follow Jack, because that is an impossible act to follow. I'd like to just say good evening to everybody. I'm the president of the Economic Development Partnership. Actually, chairman. Okay, chairman. Lose track sometimes with the nonprofits. Just to give you a quick update on the executive search, we started a pretty exhaustive executive search to replace Bob Demersman last year. Did a national level search. We're starting with the Rapid City Journal, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, AAC Chamber Jobs, the Argus Leader, Dakota Roots, National Association of Regional Councils, Yahoo Hot Jobs. So it was a national level search, vetted the group down to about 10 people, did phone interviews, and then extended personal interviews for our top candidates to come out. We did interviews one-on-one with our top candidates after we ranked them. Had a very good candidate we liked a lot, and for personal reasons he could not accept the position. It would, basically met with unanimous approval of the selection committee. Went down to number 2 on the selection committee. Again, good candidate, would have been a good fit for the organization, but again, there were some personal issues with his spouse and health issues in the family, and they couldn't move, so we lost candidate number 2. And at that point, with the consent of the mayor, selection committee, we decided to restart the application process rather than keeping going down the list and down the list. We started to restart the application process after the holidays. So we've gone out to all of the existing places where we had the searches done before, also adding in the Denver newspaper, the only one that is left, and also some other professional organizations, and tried to expand the search a little bit more. We're going to have the ads open for about the next 30 days. Then we'll go in there and go through the same selection process. About the only thing we're going to do differently this time is probably bring out our top 3 candidates to 4 candidates for meetings all at once, so it doesn't drag on as long. So I'm comfortable given the changing job environments that we're in right now with the economy. The benefit is going to be, I think there's going to be some candidates out there that we didn't have access to before. And we've already had people proactively calling us that just even from the outside, we haven't opened up the job position yet, and we're still getting candidates calling us. So I think the job market is changed to the point where we might have some better candidates than we did even last time. So with that, I'm going to bring up Terry Haverly. She'll give you some updates on what we're doing right now. And then also, I'd like to invite all of the city council members to a briefing that we're going to have. One of the two key focuses are expanding our medical economic development, because that's a key strength that we have in the area. And the second is obviously the Sanford National Underground Laboratory. And we want to make sure that we don't miss any early stage job creation opportunities there. So I'd like to invite all the city council members to a meeting. It's going to be on the 18th at 11 a.m. Ron Wheeler from the South Dakota Deep Underground Lab, whatever acronym you want to use for it, is going to be there and going to give us essentially an update on the economic development opportunities from the SUSL or the DUSL. So I think that'll be excellent. And then the last thing is, not only are we proactively going after other companies, there's not going to probably be a lot of relocations this year with the corporate budgets where they are. It's one of those things where I wish we would have a ton of new businesses coming into Rapid. I don't think that's a real possibility, although we are actively pursuing any leads that we have. One is Koss Electronics, and we actually have offered to fly out to meet with Michael Koss, the owner of the company, and see what we can do to be proactive as far as bringing his business and manufacturing facility. And last but not least, we don't want to miss out on the opportunities to expand local businesses that are already creating jobs, RPM Associates, AccuPress, make sure we don't lose the local talent that we have as well. So with that, I'll pass it off to Terry.
Thank you. Hey, Terry.
Thank you.
I think we all know you, but if you could just identify yourself for those listening in on either the streaming or watching the television broadcast.
Certainly. I'm Terry Haverly, the Vice President of Rapid City Economic Development, working now as the interim president for a while till we get the new hired executive. Since the middle of January, I've had contact with 17 companies, and over half of them are out of state. They're requesting specific information on Rapid City, our business climate, primarily things like the tax codes, the tax issues here, and available buildings. Now, these are very early stage requests. It's very cumbersome. However, I'm following up with each one of them routinely, and one of them, as David stated, will be a very good prospect for us. But also, I've been making local businesses visits to local businesses to better understand their challenges and needs as we're fine-tuning our strategic plan and recommendation. So far, I've been focusing on Rushmore Business Park because that's the park that we have owned land in and have sold to companies. And the overall feeling from them is they're monitoring the national situation, but they're doing fine. They've all had a very strong 2008. Some have made some slight adjustments, but I will tell you one thing, all of them are extremely appreciative of economic development, going out and visiting them and just making a relationship to see, if there's anything going on. So that's something I'm going to continue on with. Also cooperating with the state on an aggressive program on what we've identified as a prime market in the biotechnology, the biomedical industry particularly. I'll be going to make some face-to-face visits with 4 other communities in South Dakota. Like David said, we'll be making visits with specific companies that the state's going to help us to identify in this particular industry. I have been in contact with the general manager of Sanmina regarding their building information as well as the skill sets of their employees. I'm sharing that information with the state as we're all aggressively, trying to see what can be done with that building. But really right now, just getting the building specs and skill levels of the employees to see if there's any fit that the state or I can help them with. Also, with the Ellsworth Financial Services Center, we want to ensure that they have plenty of applicants and that those jobs get filled out there. It's a little bit of a cumbersome job application because it's a federal website that you have to go through. So work with the Department of Labor to see about making sure that they have applicants. We're not sitting on our hands in this time. We're adapting, reevaluating everything that we do, updating our community profile, our community data sheets, and the new trend does seem to be that the types of deals are specific to specific industries, which is hence the beginning of our aggressive marketing campaign in the biomedical industry. Now, I'm sure you're all wanting to know what's going on at the business incubator, so Jim Meyerhouse is going to go ahead and give you some specifics on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Again, Jim, if you just identify yourself.
Jim Meyerhouse with the Business Development Center. I'm going to take you through a very quick walk because I also took the liberty of handing this out to you so you can read about it in your leisure. But I wanted to kind of just start from 2006 and hit some high points. Remember, it's a 40,000 square foot facility. We occupied it in 2006. And our initial cost was $2.5 million, of which you folks put in $700,000. The rest was EDA, state, the rest, to get that initial building built. Since that time, we have now put in we have total in the building today, $3.7 million. That's primarily private industry, such as Innovative Systems, paid for their own build-out. And we got matching funds from some of the others, and then the foundation has made up the differences. As you know, we've got all of those support facilities in the front, about 10,000 square feet for the SBA, the SCORE, and the likes of them. It's interesting because there's over 450 people come up there for services, free for the asking, and from throughout the community. So it's got a good community touch from the standpoint of people coming up, getting SBA help, business planning help, that type of thing. And then 75% of the facility is for startup businesses. Right now we've got 6, and they're employing 58 employees right now in the startup businesses. 23 of those are students going to tech, working in their career field, such as IT or engineering of one form or another. So it's a great tie to tech. So you can start to see how it was a great idea. It really worked out well, and is working out well. Our current operating budget is $300,000. Got 82 people in that building. Got room for, like I said, about 10,000 square feet. I look at that as probably somewhere around 4 more businesses. Seems like average from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. Right today, I have one person talking to me out of Colorado, but I don't count that one until we see more of their whole plan and all of those things. But we're cash flowing, so just keep the rents up, and everybody, and Mr. Costello keeps working. We'll be able to keep their company here, and we'll have it all set. Any questions?
Is there any questions? Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've got several questions for all three. First of all, I'd like to say to the good president or chairman that he's making the necessary steps to get the right person. That you didn't have to go down to the 3rd or 4th or 10th person. It's good that you said, first 2 didn't work. Let's start all over again. Let's get another crop of people, and then we can take the best person again. And that takes a lot of fortitude. That takes leadership, and I'm glad you're doing that. So you're doing the right thing, and I applaud you for it. The second question, or the real first question I have is that right now this higher ed building, I'm concerned about the human resource development that we have. We've got several good universities. We've got Tech. We've got Western Dakota Tech. We have a lot of good areas. We have a lot of good schools that we have here, but we want to be able to talk about that higher ed building and how that's going. I know that it passed the House this recently, and it's going to the Senate. Are we doing anything to encourage that to move forward? I mean, several months ago we all approved this idea of supporting this building and supporting this general facility for higher education, and I'm just wondering, where are we as far as Rapid City, as far as economic development, supporting this kind of move and moving forward with the Senate?
I've been participating with the group that has been putting that piece together with Tad Perry and a number of others, and we feel that it's going to go along quite well. The issue is going to be there probably need to be some money raised eventually, none required for the passage of it, and we'll have to get on with that. But I think that there's a good group. It's representative from Spearfish area throughout the Black Hills, so I think it's a good mix of people working for the same common goal.
Just so everyone knows, it's actually up in front of the Senate Appropriations Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Mayor. So to me, this building is and this facility is really important for our human development, and I think we should, as a city, and put our backs into it and try to make this happen. I mean, Sioux Falls got one, Pierre has one now. We really need something like that here in Rapid City as well. So I applaud your efforts, and I hope we can keep moving forward on that to make this a reality, because it is so important for our human development, for businesses to come through. It's one of the major cogs that you have in economic development. So it's important that we don't fall asleep at the switch on this. And the last thing I have, Mayor, if I can, is this incubator is supposed to bring in new ideas and get the companies going. and then eventually they're supposed to move out and do well in the community. Do you have any feedback on how many has actually moved out yet, or are on the verge of moving out?
Mr.
Well, our
Morehouse.
first one due out, if you look at just the lease, will be 2011. But I think that we'll be seeing Reinforced Tech, which was before, you might have recognized the name as is Black Bull, that is doing a substitute rebar out of basalt and spinning it into a fiber. They fully intend to be out of, not necessarily out of there, but building a plant within the next couple of years. So we'll see how that goes with the downturns. Things, I think some of this might slip a bit, but nevertheless, they're progressing quite well.
Thank you.
Well, what you're doing out in the incubator is just phenomenal stuff. I mean, this is really good stuff for our community, our city, and for the people that want to live here. So I applaud all you people. You're doing a great job, and keep it up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a time to thank Dave, Terry, and Jim for all their work out there. I've toured the facility just a little while ago, not too long ago, and appreciate all the hard work you guys do. And I was most impressed with the reinforced rebar. I'm waiting to see that get going because I'm kind of in the manufacturing field, so I'd like to see that going. But keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Morehouse alluded to, I am a direct beneficiary of the work that's gone on there, and I greatly appreciate it, and I see what goes on every day. They work very hard, and I didn't know the numbers. I didn't realize that there are 58 employees and 23 tech students. That's so exciting to me because those are 58 employees and 23 future graduates who would have gone elsewhere to work when they graduate. And I do have a major tech bias as my alma mater, but I'm excited to hear that you're working on biomedical companies, because I know that on the School of Mines campus there's a push to bring in more biomedical classes, so I like how you're meshing with that. So keep up the good work. See you tomorrow. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Remember and bring your key.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. We will move on. We are on to the non-public hearing items, items 2 through 63. The chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period for items 2 through 46, please. 2 through 46. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I do not have any speaker request forms for items 2 through 46, which would also include 3A. Does anyone wish to speak to any item 2 through 46 inclusive, including item 3A? If not, Chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public comment period on 2 through 46 inclusive, including item 3A. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the consent calendar, items 2 through 46, including 3A. Chair would ask if any items need to be removed from the consent calendar. If so, please turn on your light. I do have 3A. We'll pull 6, 12, 26, and 46. So 3A, 6, 12, 26, and 46. Any additional items? Let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I pull item 23, please?
23. Got it. And let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item 32, please.
Item 32. Thank you. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Item 18, please.
And item 18. Okay, any others so far? We're going to pull 3A, 6, 12, 18, 23, 26, 32, and 46. Almost like bingo, isn't it? Okay. Yep. Going for blackout tonight. Okay. If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar, items 2 through 46 inclusive, with the exception of 3A, 6, 12, 18, 23, 26, 32, and 46, please.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to 3A, and Alderman Quaker, could you read, do you have that? Could you read that in, please?
I have an alcohol license, so I'm not sure what.
I can read
This
that.
is, let's go to Mr. Preston, I'll let you make the motion. This is a set for hearing. Mr. Preston, can
Thank
you read
you,
that
Mayor.
in? And
It is a set for hearing for March 16th, 2009. Transfer liquor license from Fatty McGee's Incorporated to Uglies Incorporated.
Move approval.
Ugly.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? I would say this was an ugly motion, but I think I probably. Yeah, been a long day. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 6, please. Let's see, which one was that? And that would also be, that would be Mr. Kroger. Could you read item number 6 in, please?
Item number 6 is direct staff to review the current bike route plan and to make recommendations for possible changes that may be needed since the plan was originally implemented.
Let's go to, I'm going to go to Marcia. I think she had a revised motion.
Thank
Marcia.
you. In your packets should have been some information that Tony Broom had forwarded to me. We'd actually like the motion to read that Costello moves, seconded by Hadcock, to direct staff to develop an RFP to review the current bike route plan for possible changes that may be needed since the plan was originally implemented. That was the motion that actually came forward out of committee, so we would ask for your concurrence with their action.
I'm pretty sure that's what Ron said.
That was my motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
To the exact word.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to comment on how important I feel it is that this move on, especially with the work that's being done on Jackson and the upcoming work on East North Street and trying to connect these different areas of town in a way that can be safely accessed by bicycle for both recreational and commuting purposes. I think that having a plan in place will really help us lobby the state when it comes to more, for instance, East North Street when they redo that, and also the future updates on Jackson. So I'm excited to see this go through. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Further discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I would just reiterate what Aaron has discussed and remind everyone that we really are talking about bicycle commuting in most of the material that is suggested by this plan. And so that fits into a special category because those are folks who are getting to work in the fastest possible way using bicycles. So I'm in support of what Aaron is proposing.
Very good. Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion on that motion? We're on item number 12. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 18. Mr. Kroger, could you read that in, please?
I believe
I'm sorry. I did skip number 12.
Item number 12 is to authorize staff to advertise for bids for the East North Street Overlay Project, CIP number 5445. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd asked to have this removed so we could probably get a little update from Robert Ellis on this. And the reason why is we've had a lot of concerns, me and Kroger, about East North Street. And from CIP, we'd always said, you know, 09 we're starting, and now we're getting, it's 09 and it's getting pushed off. And so I'd just like to have a little update from, with this overlay, this is going to be something temporary. We can find out where it's going to be at.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director, who's going to explain that this is all the state's fault.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will do that. And maybe a little bit of background information would be pertinent here. East North Street was a state highway that was donated to the city of Rapid City, and when it was donated, it was in rather poor shape. So we entered into an agreement with the Department of Transportation that they would fund 50% of the total reconstruction of East North Street between Campbell all the way down, even a little bit farther south than Omaha Street. Due to their financial status, they've been unable to meet their end of the obligation, and so the street has really deteriorated quickly. This project tonight that you will be voting on is to spend $190,000 to do some overlays, which are, in all honesty, is just putting a Band-Aid on a very big sore in that part of town. However, it will make some improvements in there until the DOT can find the necessary funding to uphold their end of the obligation.
Thank you. And Robert, my understanding was it 2010 where they thought they'd have the money, or was it 11?
With the stimulus, things might be changing. This may move to the forefront. Originally, we were talking about the possibility of constructing in several phases, probably 4 different construction phases. We're doing design right now. Best case scenario, we would see construction in 2010. I wouldn't bank on that, but that would be a best case scenario.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Robert, what the price on that is supposedly around 18 million, is that correct?
It is. In
It's a
today's
large-
dollars, it would be an $18 million
A
project.
very large project, so we need a partner in that.
Yep. Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 18, Mr. Kroger, if you would, please.
Item number 18 is to authorize Mayor and Finance Officer to sign a consulting agreement with Link Associates Incorporated for the landfill leachate removal and remediation, the final design and bidding in the amount of $23,515. Move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 2 items linked here, an original document that I believe was presented to the committee and a revised document has a change or 2 suggested by Mr. Landine, I believe dealing with payment and deletion of interest language. The recommendation is for approval of the revised document.
Is that all right with the motion maker?
That was my motion, Mayor.
Okay, and the seconder, that's all right with?
Yes.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval of the revised per the link. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 23, please.
Item number 23 is to approve an initial resolution of necessity setting time and place for hearing on March 10, 2009 at 7 o'clock p.m. for the Tower Road Water Main Loop Project. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you again, Mayor. On this item, the date that is set for the hearing of the resolution of necessity lists March 10th at 7 p.m. That actually needs to be changed to April 16th at 7 p.m., or excuse me, April 6th at 7 p.m. That was a typo.
Okay, is that all right with the motion maker?
That changes in my motion, Mayor.
Okay, and the seconder.
Yes.
Okay, motion is for approval. And also changing the hearing date from the listed March 10th to April 6th at 7 p.m. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 26, and we'll go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item 26 is to acknowledge a report from Mike Miles on 2008 all-nighter adult softball tournament and approve request for a tournament to be held June 12 to 13, 2009. Move to acknowledge the report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the report. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 32, please.
Item 32 is to designate 1 parking space on the north side of Kansas City Street at the east end of the Quest Building as a loading-unloading zone with flashers required. I yield to the floor as I will be abstaining from this item since my employer is one of the beneficiaries of this motion.
Very good. We have a motion, please.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to any discussion on that motion. Motion is for approval. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes, and we'll acknowledge that Alderman Quaker did abstain. Thank you, everyone. Item number 46, please. Ron, could you read that in?
Item number 46 is to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request. Wait a second here. 46, a request by Britton Engineering and Land Surveying for Linda Wines for a layout plat located at 13924 Neck Yoke Road. I would move to deny without prejudice.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice. Any discussion on the motion? Marcia, that is the correct motion, correct? Okay, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the consent calendar. We are on to the non-consent calendar. Item 47 through 60. I'm sorry, Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want a clarification. When Mr. Quaker made a motion to acknowledge report, was your intent to also improve the tournament for those dates?
That's what I said.
I believe that was inherent in the motion.
My mistake then.
Yep.
I thought he...
Okay, we are on to the non-consent calendar. Items 47 through 63. Chair will look for a motion to open the public comment period. Item 47 through 63 inclusive. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I have no speaker request forms. I haven't had one all night. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to any item on the non-consent calendar? Items 47 through 63 inclusive. If not, the chair will look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to close the public comment period on items 47 through 63 inclusive. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And we are on to item number 47, and Alderman Quaker, if you could read that in.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 47 is first reading of ordinance 5487, an ordinance to repeal the requirement for a precious metals and precious gems license by repealing Chapter 5.40 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Move approval of first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I looked through this item and I realized this is first reading, I did have some questions. And I guess I asked the body as to when is the appropriate time to ask those questions, if it is a part of first reading or if I need to defer my questions till second reading.
I believe that's your option. If you'd like to ask a question now.
In which case, then I will go ahead and ask questions. First of all, I looked under the ordinance, and in the section that's 5.40.100 under record keeping, there were a number of things that I looked at in terms of the obligation of those who hold this license to keep track of things. And it did occur to me that these might have some implications. I thought maybe somebody was joking. Okay.
Nope.
This has some implications, I think, for our police force. This is in terms of keeping track of the number of things that are being handled by these various dealers. In addition to that, when I looked also at 5.40110, and there is a holding period, and I thought that too had some implications for our police force in terms of investigations, and I had some questions about how that impacts searching for stolen property and items of that nature. Under 5.40.130, I noticed that these are all sections which will be deleted as part of the loss of this particular ordinance. This is in relationship to transactions with minors. If you're 18 years old and younger, it's illegal to carry on a transaction, and that section would be gone as well. And lastly, under 5.40180, I noticed that pawnbrokers and other agents are exempt from any of the requirements of recording and listing of transactions. And the concern I had here was how will our police force handle some of those issues of stolen property now that those parts of the toll ordinance is gone, but those parts I thought were significant, and I just thought my colleagues at least ought to consider the potential problems that exist with the loss of those sections of the ordinance, as well as the ordinance in total.
Thank you, ma'am. Why don't we go to Chief Allender?
Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
Mayor.
Chief.
Some of the things you spoke of, the not carrying on a contract with someone under 18, I think those sections are mirrors of current state law. As far as losing the ability to govern some of the actions of the gems and metals dealers, I can't stand here and tell you that we've had a long history of dealing with stolen property with them. We have a once in a blue moon need to deal with those folks in particular. There must be another pawn ordinance because I don't believe the pawn and second-hand dealers are exempt from that. They do keep records and they do have a holding period, and we work very closely with them on a daily basis to make sure those things are up to snuff. Overall, without this ordinance, I think we just won't know what we don't know, whether or not there's stolen property coming in and going out of the GEMS dealers. But this type of stuff is a little harder to track than a serial numbered item. And like I said, we don't have regular contact with them.
Alderman Olson, you still have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. So then my question, so that what you're telling me is particularly the section that deals with pawnbrokers is covered in other parts of either state law or our ordinances?
It must be covered in our ordinance. Maybe Jason can be more specific on that, but I do know that we enforce that on a regular basis.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Pawnbrokers are regulated by Chapter 5.36 of the Municipal Code, which is not being amended by this ordinance. So all the provisions that apply to pawnbrokers will continue in effect.
Okay.
Thank you very
And
much.
you still have the floor.
That answers my question.
Okay. Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval of first reading. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is just first reading, but I will be voting no on this simply because I thought a better option for the council to adopt was option 3 that was put out by our city attorney. I know this just takes away, repeals that dealing with precious metals and gems, but I still thought that option 3 was a better option for the council to adopt. And obviously that's not the case, so I will still disagree with that and vote no on this, and will vote no throughout the second reading and the final passage of this ordinance.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval of first reading of ordinance 5487. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Why don't we take a quick roll call just to get it on the record?
Quaker.
Aye.
Olson.
No.
Kroger.
Aye.
Costello.
Aye.
Hadcock.
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Wyffenbach.
Aye.
Okrepke.
Aye.
Chapman.
Okay, motion passes on an 8-2 vote, correct? Very good. Thank you, everyone. Item number 48, please.
Item 48 is first reading of ordinance 5488, an ordinance to correct the numbering of certain sections of the municipal code by reenacting chapter 3.26 of the code and creating chapter 3.28 of the municipal code. Move approval of first reading.
Second.
We have a motion second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 49, please.
Item 49 is first reading of ordinance 5490, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning within the described properties requested by the city from no-use district to low-density residential district located at 501 and 583 Valley Drive. Move approval of first reading.
We have a motion second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 50, please.
Item 50 is first reading of ordinance 5491, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning within the described properties requested by the city from no-use district to general ag located at 405 Valley Drive. Move approval of first reading.
We have a motion second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 51, please.
Item 51 is first reading of ordinance 5492, an ordinance amending 17.06 of chapter 17 of the municipal code as requested by the city for a rezoning from no-use district to general commercial located at 3030 East Highway 44. Move approval.
We have a motion second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 52, please.
Item 52 is first reading of ordinance 5493 for a rezoning from no-use district to public district located north of South Dakota East Highway 44 and west of Lancer Drive. Move approval.
We have a motion second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 53, please.
Item 53 is second reading of ordinance 5480, an ordinance creating chapter 15.15 of the municipal code entitled International Existing Building Code. Move approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor, and I do support second reading of this ordinance, but I do have a question regarding clarification of how this relates to the fire code. Over the years, from time to time, there's been conflicts between the building code and the fire code, and the council did appoint a committee a few weeks ago as part of that resolution. But my question is how are we going to deal with when we have two different codes as far as which applies? Would it be the more restrictive or the more lenient code?
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The general rule is that the more restrictive code applies. And I right offhand, I can't think of an exception to that. There may be fewer instances of conflict in this code because it's not as extensive as the International Building Code.
Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. So my concern is really from a coordination aspect. When an engineer or an applicant has their plans redlined or marked up by one division, and the fire department takes a look at it and says, oh, wait a minute, you need to do this. And that type of situation has occurred. I'm not being critical of anybody, but how do we resolve that so up front applicants know what's being expected of them?
Okay, let's go to Marcia Elkins, our growth management director.
There's kind of two answers to that question about the coordination. First of all, when someone comes in with an application, they submit that through the building permit staff, and those are reviewed and comments are given back to the individual, and those are all coordinated through that group. So they would have all of the comments, including those from the fire department, as well as from the building code review staff. In addition, when someone contacts us, it is professional. They're fully aware that most communities have adopted modifications to their ordinances and the International Building Code. And so typically someone who's coming to our community will ask questions about what those are and ask for a copy of them. If I could, Mayor, I need to clarify, though, this is the International Existing Building Code. 2 weeks ago, we adopted the International Building Code. This is the document that allows us to work with existing structures and to deal with modifications. So more generally, the issue is related to the International Building Code itself.
Right. And under this code, typically with the existing, international existing building code is a lot more lenient as far as allowing the status quo versus the construction.
Correct. It provides with some options for some existing buildings to provide some flexibility.
Very good. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor. Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I don't know who can answer this question, but my question would be this. I noticed that this is the recommendation of the Building Code Adoption Committee, and I just wondered, that committee, did it have representation from building owners who may find challenges in terms of updating an old building? This is an existing building.
Very good. Good question. Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our growth management director.
The International Building Code Committee that we had involved professionals involved in the field. A number of those are business owners as well that have businesses in buildings that they have updated or moved those structures into it, or those businesses into over the last few years. So they're very familiar with the issues because they represent clients, but also have represented themselves at various times.
Okay. Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Marcia.
Yep, go ahead, please.
Marcia, does it take professionals to build these buildings to these codes?
Marcia?
Typically, when you're dealing with commercial buildings, yes. They would typically be required to do that.
Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 54, please.
Item 54 is second reading of ordinance 5478, an ordinance revising the regulations for travel parks by amending 4 sections of chapter 12.44 of the municipal code. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval and discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 55, please.
Item 55 is second reading of ordinance 5481, an ordinance authorizing water bill rebates for purchase and installation of certain water-conserving appliances and fixtures by adding section 13.04.655 to the municipal code. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think I spoke before and said how great of an idea I believe this is. You know, fresh water is a precious resource, and anything we can do to reduce the use of fresh water that's not used for drinking is only going to benefit us. My question might be for, I believe, for Robert. As I read the amended ordinance, some of the literature that is striked out seems to be that connected to new construction. So did something change there that I missed?
Let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. After receiving some input after first reading and looking into the matter a little bit further, originally we did not qualify high-efficiency washers for new construction. And after receiving a number of people that commented on that, I tend to agree with the amendment that's listed on the agenda, that we would open that up for new construction. And the thought being that when people purchase a house, usually the washer isn't provided with your purchase of your new home. And so homeowners at that point in time are going out and looking for the appropriate washer to buy. And it would be a good opportunity then to get them to buy a high-efficiency washer and begin using that. And the reason it's not available for new constructions on the toilet is generally that's being done right now. Most new construction does have low-flow toilets installed. So it would be rewarding somebody for a practice that they're already doing, which really doesn't make any sense. That's not altering a behavior to be more positive towards water conservation. Whereas with the washer, the high-efficiency washer, it would encourage people to purchase those high-efficiency machines. So that is the bulk of the amendment change.
Thank you. Anything else?
Well, thank you, Robert. Appreciate you analyzing that and coming up with an even better solution.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is in regard, I've had a constituent contact me who wondered about rental properties, and the question specifically was, could a renter who is paying their own water bill and therefore would be one of our enterprise users, would they be able to apply for this rebate? And then I have one additional question.
Okay, let's go to Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Thank you again. Yes, for that type of a situation, so long as they are a city customer, so the bill would have to be in their name so we can identify them as one of our customers. So that would be a possibility. There are several other things that they would have to do, of course. Purchase it locally, we would do the inspection. All of that would stay the same, but it would work so long as they're a city customer.
Okay, let's go back to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
So even though the property belongs to someone else, they would still be, I mean, because this is a, this involves a toilet. Am I correct? It could involve a toilet. So that would be, obviously, the renters, when they move out, they're not going to take their toilets with them.
Let's go back to Robert Ellis.
Yep, that would be correct. So for the toilet, you know, it would stay at the home. Nobody takes the toilet with them. And that's positive, the fact that that toilet is staying there and it's a low-flow toilet. So yes, it would qualify.
Thank you very much. And then my other question is, there's one place in the, where it says you can't sell your old, you know, if you get one of these, you can't sell the old appliance, and that seemed to me like a, how will we determine that they aren't selling these or giving them away? So that, I mean, the implication was that they not be reused in some fashion.
Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, actually, what the ordinance does is that they sign an agreement that says they agree to several things, and one of them being, I agree to dispense of the replaced appliance, if necessary, in a manner that is environmentally sound. In other words, don't drive them out of town and throw them in the ditch.
Thank you.
Dispose of them at the appropriate location.
I support the motion, and you've answered my questions, and they'll be helpful as I have several constituents who are concerned about several of these items. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Robert and his staff for taking a second look at this and revising it as it relates to new construction. But my question is, we're encouraging people to, we're encouraging conservation measures, we're encouraging people to buy local. Are we doing anything with the local appliance sellers to give them a heads up that when people come in to purchase, if they're building a new home, that there is some rebate, if you will, for purchasing the high-efficiency washers and toilets.
Let's go to Robert Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, we have been. I have been in contact with a number of the local vendors, and I've actually put together a list, and we will post all of this information on our website. But we've developed a list of high-efficiency washers that they sell. It's actually probably 15 pages long, and I've been waiting for council to approve this before I get too far ahead of myself, but I plan to sit down with all the vendors, explain the program, give them the applications, give them some information brochures they can hand out to their customers. So we will engage them. I just wanted to wait until council had final approval of this ordinance before I did that.
Okay, Mr. Chapman, you still have the floor, sir.
I think I heard and call the question. That's what I think I heard him say, so we could hurry up and vote on it.
Okay. Well, have a couple more lights and then we'll get there. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, to keep the levity going and to follow up with Alderman Karen Olson. Assuming that assuming that the person, when they move out of a rental property, does take the toilet, does the landlord get a break? Does the landlord can appreciate this rebate, or is it just property owners? I mean, just people who live there.
The rebate would be to the person who actually installed it, would be the account holder on that, for that account. I guess they may see an ancillary benefit if the renter leaser moves out and the low-flow toilet stays in place. That savings could be passed on to future tenants.
Well, because the reason why I'm asking is that typically the owner of an apartment or a house that they rent does not hold the water. I mean, you know, the renter pays the water, and so the people that own the buildings never see it. And so if they do need to replace it, does these landlords can appreciate this this rebate? So in other words, I own a house that I haven't rented. The renter moves out, I need to replace a washer, or I have to replace one of those items that's on the list, and I have to buy it to replace it. Can I now take that rebate?
If your name is on the account, then you'd be eligible.
Yes, that is the only way that we verify you don't have somebody from out of town installing it in their friend's house. We come do the inspection, then they leave town with the device. So it has to be for the person that is on the account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification. This item again has the original ordinance and the amended ordinance as proposed by the Public Works Director. The discussion has been about the amended ordinance, so I'm assuming that was the intent of the motion maker, was to approve the amended ordinance rather than the original.
Very good. We'll make that clarification. Is that correct with the motion maker? Alderman Quaker? Okay. And the seconder? Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval of second reading of ordinance 5481 as per the amended version on our links. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 56, please.
Item 56 is approval of an event permit for Order of the Eastern Star for unenforced parking on both sides of Kansas City Street between 6th and 7th Street on March 7, 2009 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. For the sake of discussion, I'll move approval.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is this particular item and other items similar to it, which we have approved, which is in which we've allowed unenforced parking on various streets in the city, is something I voted for in the past. It reflects often support of individual business activity or other kinds of ancillary activities that have been of benefit to downtown. But I would like to say that while I will vote in favor of this particular one, as we put in place our new parking meter ordinances, I just want to let people be on notice that in the future, I don't think there should be any exceptions to the use of meters. I think that in the interests of our larger issue, which is providing a revenue stream through this enterprise fund to enable us to increase parking, particularly increase parking structures, I think we have to be very judicious in allowing and in moving that forward. And I think these exceptions probably are a modest loss of revenue, but they probably don't speak to our larger interest in making a revenue stream that in as large a way as possible and as quickly as possible supports the kind of dollars that it will enable us to build new parking structures, which I think the community is asking for in every possible way. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoops.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alderman Olson, for your comments as well. It's going to become more and more difficult for us to say no unless we establish a line in the sand, and I think the appropriate line in the sand would be the new parking meters and the new parking ordinance. It's going to become increasingly difficult to say no to these organizations when they come forward asking for this. I'm going to support this tonight, but I agree that that would be the appropriate time to not allow this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what my colleagues have said thus far. I guess my question is, we're approving this event permit for this particular organization at these streets, but they can't stand out there and guard the parking spaces, can they? So anyone who wants to park there that particular day, unenforced, can park there. Thank you.
That is correct. Okay, motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Does anyone wish to speak before Alderwoman Olson speaks for a second time? If so, turn on your light. If not, we'll go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
In answer to Alderman Chapman's comments, that was one of the things it is Cindy Laughlin, I believe, whose name is on the paperwork for this, and I spoke to her today, as maybe others of you did, and I was very specific to say to her, you know you can't just save this parking for your folks, that anyone who comes and decides to do that. So I think she understands that very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 57, please.
Item 57 is to authorize Mayor and Finance Officer to sign a contract for legal services as bond counsel between the City of Rapid City and Dorsey and Whitney LLP. Yield to the floor.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, some background, I think, on this is warranted. For a number of years, the city has had two important partners when it comes to bonding and legal counsel. Dorsey and Company out of Sioux Falls for bonding. I'm sorry, Doherty and Company out of Sioux Falls for bonding, and Dorsey and Whitney out of Minneapolis for legal counsel. They've provided good service to the city over the years. However, it hasn't been competitive, and so I would like to thank the mayor, staff, and council for hiring a disinterested third party, Springstead, which was also chosen competitively, to assist with this process for selecting a bond firm. That's the biggest part. The other part, legal counsel, which is what's before us tonight. I think we also need to introduce competition to the greatest degree possible as well. Now, we know that an outright competitive bid doesn't work very well for this type of service, but we should at least be doing due diligence to make sure that we're getting the best deal. The council has decided that we are not in favor of a non-competitive contract for an in-state firm, and I completely agree, that we shouldn't be in favor of a non-competitive contract. Then why should we be in favor of a non-competitive contract for an out-of-state firm? Let's do some due diligence. Let's take a look at the 10 firms that are on the list that Springstead has provided us, and let's do more than just contact one. To my knowledge, none of the other 9 have been contacted. So I would really encourage my colleagues to see what we can do to make sure we're getting the best price for the taxpayers on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Jim Preston because there were some questions as far as, I had Mr. Preston contact Springstead and actually asked him a couple questions. Mr. Preston?
Thank you, Mayor. As per your direction, we did ask Springstead to provide a list of other council that, or bond council are aware of. That's the list that you have there. Also, the mayor did ask if I would contact them and see how many of them have worked, how many of the bond council has Springstead worked with on something near the value of the bonds that the city of Rapid City is looking at, and that's about $130 million. There were 4. Dorsey and Whitney was 1. Fager and Benson, McGrain, Shee, and then Leonard Street and Dyard. They had not worked with the ones from Sioux Falls and some of the others. We did also ask how many have they worked with on issues in South Dakota, and the only one was Dorsey and Whitney. And I guess I better stop there because nobody asked me other questions.
No, and that's fine. And the reason we asked was we thought it was very important, number one, to identify those bond councils that have worked on projects of this size, and we identified 4, and then the follow-up question was, okay, of those 4, have you worked on any in the state of South Dakota? And the only one that had was the Dorsey and Whitney. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I appreciate that. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Mine is a question for Mr. President as well. Just to help me in making this decision, can you go through the process of how how Springstead was selected and how we're proposing selecting this organization, and then how ultimately the organization issuing the bonds is selected?
Mr. Preston.
Thank you. Certainly. We did do an RFP, a request for proposals, for the financial advisor. We did telephone interviews for 6 of the financial advisors that consisted of a team of 7 individuals, including the mayor and Mr. Kroger were on that, and also an outside individual, U.S. Bank, Pat Burchell. Thank you. And we reviewed those. We analyzed their proposals. We did the telephone interview, analyzed their response to our questions, etc. And the consensus of the group was to go with Springstead for the financial advisor. Now, as far as essentially we went with a financial advisor,
Mr.
one
Preston,
reason because of the size.
just
yes.
one point of clarification, and that was the fact that one of the things that we did note with Springstead was the fact that they did not provide bonding services, so they basically were our financial advisors, and they do not have the ability to actually issue bonds. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I thought that was an important point.
Good point. And then, of course, we did bring that through Legal and Finance and the council. Far as a bond council, that was my recommendation, essentially because we have worked with Dorsey and Whitney. We did ask Springstead if they were comfortable working with their category, and they felt that that was a good recommendation or a good team to work with. We have worked with them in the past. They do understand South Dakota law, and I am very comfortable with working with Dorsey and Whitney. Thank you. Did I answer your question?
So the third part is, how do we go out and actually get a, how do we propose going out to get the broker?
Okay, the underwriter, we are going to do an RFP proposal again and try to, so that we can get the best deal for the city of Rapid City. Because of the size of this, even a small percentage different would have a significant impact on the debt service payments.
Okay.
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, please.
Through the consultant process, selection process, there isn't a clear delineation of the cost that's involved. And my understanding is when you're selecting bond counsel, it would be somewhat difficult to determine exactly how much time the company would spend on this by virtue of a wide variety of variables based in law and perhaps other things as well. But I'm just asking, where does that enter into the conversation as you go through the consultant selection process? There isn't any conversation about how much you're going to charge, is there?
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There, as far as the, you're talking about bond counsel or the underwriter?
This is bond counsel.
Bond
and
counsel?
It was even maybe a generic question generally when we are in the consultant selection process. What is the financial commitment, or how do we discuss that issue?
When we did visit with Dorsey Whitney far as, what they would charge. They did provide us with a schedule for depending on the size of the bond. As you may know, we're going out for 2 issues, so we have to figure that into what they would charge the city to provide the bond counsel service. I think what you're referring to, if I'm hearing you correctly, is how big an impact would the fees be? And I guess I would say, in my opinion, that would be one of the lesser concerns. Would be more the service, the quality of service that you can get, because again, a bond issue this size, we would not want to have any type of mistake or something go awry when we go through the process, do the official statements, preliminary statements, etc. And that's what they do, is review those documents.
Okay.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went out for an RFP for the financial advisor. We're going to go out for an RFP for the underwriters of the bonds. In your mind, Mr. Preston, is there any value, in these economic times, is there any value that we place on doing business with people that we know, people that we are comfortable with, people that have a track record, people that know South Dakota law, people that know the city? I'm comfortable not going out for an RFP on the trustee at this time, or what I'm calling the trustee. And I just want to know if you think that there's some value in doing business with people that you know.
Mr. Preston.
Thank you. First off, this is bond counsel. Trustee is a different process. And certainly everything you mentioned there as far as the comfort factor, the fact that we can work with them, and I'm comfortable with the fact that they know South Dakota law. Mr. Green is comfortable with their services. Those certainly, in my mind, are a big part of who would we select to do a job like this.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Chapman? Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make one comment, or maybe a little bit more as it leads into it, but talking about the comfort levels and RFPs and those types of things, is that linked to our agenda here tonight? The reference of the history of this this bonding company, or talking about the comfort level that we have with this specific agent who will act as a trustee, or whoever will help us align out the bonding. I'm not sure where we're getting that information from.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Jim Preston, our City Finance Officer.
My understanding, unless we've changed something, what you have attached to your agenda is you have the proposed agreement with Dorsey and Whitney, and you should also have a list of 10 other bond councils that Springstead were aware of.
Okay. When Springstead did this, what confuses me is that when they did this, they came in as we went out and found Springstead to help us find counsel, or I'm not sure what's their role.
Mr. Preston.
Their role is more along the line of the underwriter, far as who would we have to actually sell the bonds, how we would sell the bonds, the different, whether they're insured, the different ratings, what we can do to get the ratings, if we want to do revenue bonds, general obligation bonds, a very different array of financial services. That'd be their recommendation. Bond counsel, the way I look at it, essentially reviews their work and makes sure it meets all the legal criteria of South Dakota law. And maybe Mr. Green could expand on that.
The first company that made a recommendation of 10 bond counsels. Didn't they know we lived in South Dakota in the beginning? If we had to go back, and I was just a little bit confused, and that's why some of this questioning has arose.
If I could respond to that.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Essentially, they did not provide us with these list of 10 names. When we brought the Dorsey and Whitney contract before the Legal and Finance, Mr. Quaker at that time asked that we go back, contact Springstead, and provide a list of other bond councils that they're aware of.
Are any of the other bond councils licensed in the state of South Dakota?
Mr. Preston?
There are, maybe Mr. Green can expand, but there are 3 from Sioux Falls that are listed on that list.
Would I ask that question to
Sure.
Mr. Green?
Go ahead. Jason?
As far as I know, the 3 Sioux Falls firms in Dorsey and Whitney are the only ones that are licensed, but I haven't reviewed the State Bar Journal for entries for the other firms, so I can't say that with absolute certainty. I can tell you that I was surprised that there were 3 firms from Sioux Falls that identified themselves as doing bonding work.
Okay. Mr. Weifenbach, you still have the floor, sir.
I guess I'm just trying to check to see what, I'm just understanding if I'm going to make a decision or whatever, I like to know what the facts are around it. And if there are 3 other licensed firms, why we didn't look at them, or if they're not licensed, then I guess it's a moot point. So if we knew that for sure, I guess. I mean, doing business as usual doesn't go over real well with me all the time, but understanding there is comfort levels with people we dealt with in the past. So.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with 1 no from Alderman Quaker. Is that correct? Very good. Thank you. We're on to item number 58 under Public Works Committee items. And Mr. Kroger, could you read in item number 58, please?
Item number 58 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign an agreement transferring Tower Road from South Dakota Department of Transportation to the city of Rapid City. I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
In the early part of the agreement, there are 3 criteria that are mentioned. And I just was trying to understand that a little bit better. Let me get it here. It says the purpose of this agreement is to 1, transfer certain property, and 2, transfer maintenance responsibility to the city, and 3, abandon right-of-way that is no longer needed. My impression is we weren't doing all of these things within this agreement, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
That is the intention of this agreement, and if I might, there's really 2 segments to this project. There is the area of the road that is part of a plat that you have approved and is pending final plat application. That would be this segment through the Tower Ridge project. If you recall, that's the piece that really started this conversation because that's where there had been a slide previously. And the developer came forward and through tax increment financing has regraded that area and moved the road around so that it would be on solid ground. In doing that and then preparing their plat, that has relocated it from its original highway location. In the process, we became aware that DOT had never transferred this segment of roadway, essentially all the way from Mount Rushmore Road all the way south to the crossover. And as a result, to relocate the road where it is intended to be based on the new construction, they need to abandon this piece that's in the center. The balance of it will be transferred to the city of Rapid City with the exception of the bridge, and the city will be responsible for maintenance. Relative to the bridge, the city will not own the bridge. We will do minimal maintenance for that in terms of the guardrails and snow plowing and the like, the surface, just to take care of the everyday kinds of things, whereas the state will be responsible for the significant cost associated with the bridge.
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry. So the bridge will continue to belong to the state, so that part, number 2, is a part of the contract. I assume that's because you wouldn't want the bridge falling in on the road or something like that. I don't know.
If I might, the bridge is a significant cost that's really outside the scope of what the city of Rapid City can address. Okay. We don't have significant bridges that we maintain, and we prefer not to be in that business. We had indicated at a staff level that we did not feel that the council would be willing to accept the responsibility for the bridge. That's typical of our other road swap agreements that we've done with the state in similar situations.
Thank you. And I'll be in support of the motion on the floor.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcia, what is the condition then of the section that the city will be taking over?
Marcia?
The segment that has just been rebuilt through the development is just a brand new street. It's in very good shape. The next segment up the hill is in poor shape, basically from where that road would continue, as I've shown in purple here, back up to where it intersects with Skyline Drive. I drove it this afternoon. It is in very rough shape, but that portion is part of another project that is pending, where the city is going to do a water project, and as such we need to reconstruct that portion as part of that project anyway. The balance of it from Skyline Drive to the south is in a little better shape. It's not a great road, but it certainly is not in the potholes condition that the in-between piece is.
Okay, Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Who is doing snow removal on that road up until now?
City of Rapid City.
Oh.
And again, if I might, Mayor,
yes.
The city was under the impression that we'd accepted this road a significant period of time. In fact, we rebuilt in the mid-90s a portion where there had been a slide in this in-between segment somewhere in that location because we thought it was our responsibility. It just came up during the research when this final plat was coming forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Marcia, I had a question for Marcia.
Go ahead, please.
The reconstruction of that road was paid for by how?
There was a tax increment financing district that was approved a number of years ago, probably 4 years ago, to rebuild this portion of it.
What it was encompassed in that district, Marcia? If you just, I guess I wouldn't hold you to specifics, but what area on there?
The district included these parcels in this area, as well as I believe the area just off the map to the north along Cathedral.
And that's all being developed right now? Or?
Portions of it are being built and lots are ready to be platted off of this area here, cul-de-sac, and then there's other faces that are down below on the Cathedral Drive side.
And I guess Alderman Quaker alluded to one of the other questions. Snow removal is done by?
It's been done by the City of Rapid City for some time.
And will continue to be?
Yes.
Who paid for that?
City of Rapid City's paid for that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Preston, we're on to the bids.
Thank you, Mayor. The first bid we have on the bid list this evening is the utility cut Portland cement replacement. We received 5 bids as they are listed. Staff is recommending accepting the Lester Robbins bid of a total of $72,500, and that was based on the estimated amount of work for the next year.
Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the Lester Robbins construction bid.
Yes, sir.
And what was the estimated dollar amount? $72,000?
$72,500, and that's based on, obviously they don't know what they're going to do, it's based on an estimate of projected projects.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Next bidding opening is Alta Vista Drive Sanitary Sewer Extension. We received 8 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Grizzly Excavators in an amount of $65,622.46.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Grizzly Excavators for $65,622.46. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Preston is.
Go ahead, please.
That the highest bid was $95,000.
I think the highest bid was 89. Or, I'm sorry, 92.
92,462.
And then the lowest bid was 65,000?
Yep. Yes,
So
sir.
the bid process saved the taxpayers about almost $30,000? About 28.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
approximately $27,000 difference. Or
Thank
so.
you.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval and acceptance of the Grizzly Excavation, Inc. proposal. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
The next bid opening is for the Vicky Powers Playground Construction Materials. We received 2 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Connex in amount of $156,317.16.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Connect Home Center for $156,317.16. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just an explanation on, for 61 and 62, what is the, how are they paying for this park? I know they were trying to tell me this morning with TIFs and SBA and some other things. I know it's a total of $875,000.
There, let's go to Mr. Cole. He's out here in the audience.
Maybe Marcia can explain it then.
Mr. Cole.
For the playground, we have a $50,000 donation from Quest. We have a $50,000 Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, and we have $130,000 from Parks and Recreation CIP for the playground. For the park, we have $500,000 from upfronted by Doyle Estes on the TIF, and I think it's 61 or 62 on the number of the TIF. And we have a $350,000 another upfronted money from the SB 28 loan fund through the number 61 or 62 TIF, which is 2 different TIFs overlaid at the same area. And we have $140,000 from CIP, Parks and Recreation CIP for the park.
Okay.
Just a question. Maybe this is for Mr. Preston. How do you get a TIF with a SBA loan funding from a TIF for SBA? I guess that's what I wasn't really understanding on this.
Mr.
Park
Preston.
paying for this park.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, it is unusual to borrow money from the SAB, but in this case, essentially, we were trying to fund this project, and one of the proposals that came up is if we've got an identifying source to repay the amount of the loan, and we had the funds available in the SAB, which is normally used for special assessments, that we would go ahead and use that money. Essentially, what I wanted to make known at the time was that we'd have to get it paid back because that is a revolving fund, and that was essentially what the agreement was, and the council agreed to that.
So, can I ask?
Yep, go
So
ahead,
this
please.
TIF is that it's supposed to be used for special assessments, or this SBA for special assessments is used for a park, which is going to be paid back by a loan from the developer from the SAB? Who's loaning the money, or who's funding this?
Mr. Preston.
Or paying this back?
The SAB is the city's funds. It's the funds we normally use for special assessments. It's a revolving fund.
Okay.
So it is the tax increment district. As we collect those funds, those will go back into the SAB fund.
So if I'm correct, we borrowed it. Did we come to the council for this, or?
No.
For some reason, I couldn't remember that we did that we did borrowed from the SAB from a TIF to pay back the city for a park.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Cole, it's September 4th, 2007, he says it came before the council.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know we can't remember everything on that, but it just seems like a crazy way how we got to paying for this park through SAB. But it sounds like people have put some really good time into this. We've got some grants. We've got some people that appreciate this, and I just needed to know the funding sources, and I appreciate that. Thank you for your information.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question for maybe Jerry Cole.
Okay.
The advertising authority on this was how much?
Just for clarification, there's actually two bids. Bid 3, the advertising authority was $230, and the low bid was $156. And just, both 3 and 4, both part of Vicky Powers Park, and that's where the conversation's gone. But
Okay, so the advertising bid for this was $230,000, and the bid came in at?
$156.
And that was because we bid this project out? I mean, that was an educated guess on one of our staff's part that this was going to cost $230,000, and then we bid it out and it cost $156. That's awesome. Bid process worked there too. Thanks.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval of to accept the bid from Connect Home Centers for $156, $317, and 16 cents. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Preston, number 62.
Thank you, Mayor. Number 62 is the Vicky Powers Park Phase 1 project. We received 4 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from RCS Construction with the base bid plus alternates 3 and 5 for a total of $854,500.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the bid from RCS Construction, which will include the base bid, alternates 3 and 5, for a total of $854,500, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Ron, do you want to talk about this? Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just alluding to a specific point, but this item here, the advertising authority was $875,000, and the bid came in at $854,000. So there's a savings of about $21,000 there by bidding this item out. Save the taxpayers $20,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval of the base, alternate 3 and 5. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. We have no items from the mayor. We have no items from the council tonight. We are on to item number 63, which is Mr. Ellis and our 2012 update.
I do have just a handful of updates to give the council tonight. The first one is for residential streets. There was an allocation of $1.5 million. We have used approximately $600,000 of that, and we're getting ready to start the design of the Robbinsdale neighborhood reconstruction project, and we'll be using the balance of that street reconstruction dollars for that construction project. The next one is downtown stormwater.
Can you give us the numbers? That was number 14. What's your next number?
Yes, the next number would be number 17, and that's the downtown stormwater improvements. These are stormwater quality improvements. There was $200,000 allocated for that. We will begin the design and construction of that shortly, but that will be completed this year, and those are improvements to Rapid Creek from stormwater drainage.
Okay.
The next update would be item number 31, and that's just a highlight there about the status of the site selection for the Elkvale Road site. No dollars are moving forward on that project, just an identification of the site. And then finally on item number 33, which is the lighted and fenced tennis courts at Parkview Pool. We are finishing design on that. We will be bidding it in the late March, early April timeframe. And just to note that the school district is reimbursing 50% of those project costs. So that will be moving forward this summer for construction.
Robert, just for clarification, is the school district bidding or we? I thought the school district was going to bid this.
They may be bidding it. We are kind of taking the lead on design. We'll
Okay.
hand those plans over and they will.
I was going to say,
administer it.
I thought they were going to bid, but thank you. Discussion on the update. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not really on the update, just on 2012 in general. Earlier tonight, if I may, the council approved item number 31, which was on the consent calendar coming from Legal and Finance, which gave the city the authority to nominate the 2012 program for a national award. So I just wanted to add that to this update on 2012, and there will be a few of us who will be working on that to just show that program already in its best light, but to show that program and to showcase that program nationally.
Thank you. My understanding, if we win, somebody's going to have to go accept the award, and I heard something about Hawaii or something. Or it's not in Hawaii, I know.
I don't think so.
Oh, good try. Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
The tennis community is very enthusiastic that the courts at Parkview are going to be bid very, very soon. This is going to give us a wonderful opportunity to add a facility on the southeast side of our community, which is filled with children. And along with the courts, there is a very long-range, full planning to provide lessons and leagues to make sure that these courts are fully utilized in the same way in which the Sioux Park tennis courts are currently used. They will be used by several of the high schools. This is going to be a great facility for our community. It will make us one of the leading communities in the Northwest region, including Minnesota, Iowa, North and South Dakota, and Nebraska, in terms of large complexes of outdoor tennis courts. So thank you very much. That's really good news, Robert. And the mayor is right. The school district is bidding the courts.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Number one, I'd like to thank Karen for all her hard work. She has fundraisers with many people and been dedicated to getting these tennis courts done. We appreciate all your hard work as well, Ms. Karen. Malcolm Chapman as well for the National League of Cities and all the recognition that he has brought to our city, to the National League of Cities. The 2012 program has been a positive and very talked about program in the National League of Cities. We can thank Malcolm Chapman for that as well. Thank you, Malcolm, for all your hard work and dedication towards making our city recognized and getting the job done for many things that we've needed your help on with the National League of Cities, and just the information that you have brought forward from the National League of Cities that has helped with our programs that we have done here.
Okay, thank you. Chair would look for a motion to acknowledge the report.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the public hearing items, items 64 through 88. Chair would look for a motion to open up the public hearing on items 64 through 88 inclusive. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. At this time, I'd like to ask anyone on the council or staff if we need to pull anything off the consent calendar, 64 through 75 inclusive. Marcia? How about from the council? If not, now keep in mind we do need to leave the public comment period open to the end. Chair will look for a motion to approve the public hearing consent items 64 through 75 inclusive per the recommendations in the packet. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Takes us to the end of the consent public hearing items. Chair will look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the consent public hearing items, items 76 through 82. And let's see here. If you have any items that need to be pulled, I'm showing items 76 and 77 need to be pulled. Any other items, 76 through 82, that we need to pull from the consent calendar? Please turn on your light. Not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items 76 through 82 with the exception of 76 and 77.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar, items 76 through 82 with the exception of 76 and 77. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 76. Let's see, Mr. Kroger, could you read that in for us, please?
Item number 76 is a request by Hills of Life Festival for a special exception to the flood area construction regulations to allow temporary structures in the floodway located north of Omaha Street, north of Mount Rushmore Road and 5th Street. Move approval with stipulations.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Marcia?
If I could just clarify that there's one stipulation, and that is that the festival will be stopped and the structures removed if ordered by the police chief, fire chief, mayor, or emergency management director. That's the recommendation of the planning commission.
Okay, very good. Is that all right with the motion maker?
Yes.
Okay, and the seconder. Very good. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the only stipulation? That's what we're approving with that that's the stipulation we're approving?
Marcia? I believe that's correct.
Correct. This is an exception to the flood standards, and that is the stipulation.
That the fire chief or they can...
Fire chief, police chief, mayor, or who's the fourth?
Emergency management director.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval with stipulations. A discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Bill Okrepke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of a policy question to me. Is this a precedence we're setting? So if there's someone else that wants to have a party in the park and they want to put a tent up for some shade so that they can have their deal, is this going to be a precedent setting for that? Because if it is, I hope so.
This is the policy that's actually been on our books for a number of years. So
because there were times that people came forward and we wouldn't let them do that. So that was my question.
Yep. Marcia, did you have anything to add? I was going to say this is the standard procedure. I think
Thank
before
you.
there's a difference between the floodplain and floodway. We've had some folks who wanted to put up temporary structures in the floodway. Those are not permitted. We do allow temporary structures in the floodplain, and I think that's where we may have been running into issues. Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval.
This is does this say floodway? Yeah, this is the floodway.
Okay. Marcia?
You know, I don't want to discourage the change of vote because I think this is the right thing to do. I'm looking at this as a precedence, and I'm hoping that we can have. I mean, this is a good thing, I think.
Yep. Marcia?
The applicant has revised their location of all their structures so that they are outside the hydraulic floodway and in the 100-year floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 77, please.
Item number 77 is a request by Dream Design International Incorporated for a variance to subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install water and sewer along Elkvale Road as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Located at Elkvale Road, lying west of Willow Bend Road, I would move to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We are on to the non-consent public hearing items 83 through 88. And we will start with item number 83 and Alderman Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 83 is second reading of ordinance 5477, ordinance amending section 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning from no use district to general commercial district located at 3030 and 3086 East Highway 44. Move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. 84, please.
Item 84 is second reading of ordinance 5482, an ordinance amending 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning as requested by the city of Rapid City for rezoning from no use district to general commercial district located at 2800 East Highway 44. Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. 85, please.
Item 85 is second reading of ordinance 5483, an ordinance amending 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning from no use district to medium density residential district located at 2345 Homestead Street. This is an application by the city of Rapid City, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Marsha, what are we doing in this area by chance?
This is the area of the North Valley Drive annexation, and so we've been we annexed this property last summer, and now we're going through the rezoning process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 86, please.
Item 86 is second reading of ordinance 5484, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of municipal code for rezoning within the described properties requested by Frank Boyle, rezoning from light industrial to general commercial located at 3637 Edward Street. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 87, please.
Item 87 is second reading of ordinance 5485, an ordinance amending 17.06 of municipal code for rezoning within the described property is requested by the city of Rapid City from no use district to general commercial district located at 2700 East Highway 44. Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
We're rezoning all this area, but the people that own these properties, they know that we're rezoning this?
Marcia?
Yes, we've contacted them, and in each report, you'll see information about what the applicant's comments, or the owner's comments were.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I didn't read those. Were they positive on rezoning this area?
I believe that this one was, yes, and I think the others that we've seen tonight have been as well.
Okay, it seems like it would be a positive for them, but I just want to make sure they're in accordance with this. Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 88, please.
Item 88 is second reading of ordinance 5486, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the municipal code for rezoning within the described property requested by the city, rezoning from no use to general commercial district located at 1475 Valley Drive. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Just remember, we are going to take up the bill list, item number 89, after 90. So the next thing on the agenda is an executive session. Chair would look for a motion to go into executive session, and Mr. Green's going to remind us.
For the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2, and that needs.
That's part of my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session as permitted by STCL 1-25-2. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd ask the council to authorize the city attorney's office to file litigation to acquire right-of-way for the extension of Anamosa Street on the Ehlers-Dwyer property.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we are actually in item number 90, just for a point.
Actually, this is under staff direction still.
Okay, very good. Everyone clear on the motion? Could you repeat the motion one time?
Authorize the city attorney to initiate litigation to acquire right-of-way for the Anamosa Street extension on the Ehlers-Dwyer property.
Very good. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
In conjunction with that, I would ask the council to authorize the finance officer to issue a treasurer's check in the amount of $152,938.38 payable to the Pennington County Clerk of Courts.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
We're on to item 90 at this point, I believe, Mayor, which is the declaration of taking for the Anamosa Street right-of-way. This is the second document that's necessary to acquire the right-of-way. The council has previously approved the resolution of necessity for this project.
Move for approval.
Okay, we have motion and second on item number 90, which is the declaration of taking in the Anamosa Street right-of-way. Any discussion? Yeah. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Preston, bill list.
Thank you, Mayor. The bill list that the council has totals $5,164,528.11. I would like to add the check to the Pennington County Clerk of Courts in the amount of $152,938.38 for a new total of $5,317,466.49.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the bill list, and double check my math here, Mr. Preston, $5,317,466.49.
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion second to adjourn. Non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned, everyone.